In the Protista kingdom, in the phylum Chlorophyta, is a species known as green algae. This specific green algae was taken out of the river in Windsor, North Carolina. You can see the particles floating in there as well as the greenish, bluish greenish color inside of the water. Around this river is a variety of trees such as cypress and pine, and there is also a diverse group of fish that are supported in this river, such as perch, bass, and brim. In some circumstances, green algae is a tremendous base for the food chain in which it is in. It allows animals to feed off of it and start the food chain through it. However, too much green algae is definitely a real thing. Too much of this can cause many species in the water to die because of lack of sunlight and oxygen. Algae have the same behavior as a plant would, however, they do not have any roots to latch onto. They don't have any leaves or any major structure that would classify them as plants. They cover lakes, ponds, and rivers in a slimy green substance that can make it extremely difficult for fish and other aquatic creatures to survive. Green algae is able to survive in these conditions for a numerous amount of reasons. For starters, they are able to cover entire bodies of water and control how much sunlight can reach the floor. They emit toxins to control how much of them gets eaten and digested. On top of that, they use photosynthesis, which means they can feed through the light of the sun. Green algae is able to communicate in chemical languages. For example, they are able to raise their own acidity level if a species is going after them. This makes the entire body of water that they are in suffer because of how much water they actually cover. Green algae is plentiful in their ecosystem. Green algae in some areas are almost considered an invasive species because of how rapidly they can take over a certain area. One thing that has changed the amount of green algae in the area over time is that they have been able to evolve and adapt so rapidly that they can survive in almost any environment. Green algae feeds off of sunlight through photosynthesis. Green algae is able to protect itself from danger by producing toxins, which, if eaten, makes the organism extremely sick. Symptoms of this are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and headaches. Green algae actually uses more than one symbiosis. They use mutualism with some species in the water because of how the species benefit from having shady areas and where they can swim. However, they also use parasitism because they take over these bodies of water, and some plants die because of the pH level and the lack of sunlight. Green algae prefers bodies of water that sit around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. They are able to survive in more condition than this because they can adapt so quickly. Climate change will affect green algae in a way that most species do not want. The change of the climate will raise the rate of algae growth in bodies of water, making them even more of a threat to species. Onto the terrestrial aspect of the Protista kingdom. Slime molds are under the phylum Myxomicota. The environment where I found this particular species, on the camera it may not show up, but you can see it right there. It's like a slimy-ish texture. The environment where I found this particular species from was in the woods by the Casci River. It is a heavily wooded area with a lot of moisture and damp underbrush. These slime molds help the environment in which they are in by decomposing rotten wood, such as this. They also decompose trash. In this particular case, I could only lightly visibly see wood with this on it. I believe that this wood has not been rotten for very long, and given it time, the mold would have taken over to decompose it. There is still some structure with it, but as time goes on, the slime mold will in fact decompose this whole piece of wood, basically. The behavior of slime mold is to quickly multiply its size on any organism of which it is on. Its genetic makeup allows it to quickly spread on any rotten surface and quickly decompose the material. The behavior of slime mold allows it to survive in its environment for a number of reasons. Number one being that because it is decomposing these materials, allows the environment to prosper and grow along with this mold. Number two is that it can spread so quickly on an object. It has been shown that slime molds can communicate with each other through rhythmic pulsations. These pulses let the slime molds know that they are lacking nutrients or other much needed items. Slime molds are currently flourishing in this world. They are able to multiply quickly and can survive in most wooded areas. One thing that has helped slime molds' population over time is the amount of trash that gets thrown into woods or blows into them. This allows the slime to start decomposing and having a home, thus making its population bigger. Please note this does not mean throw your trash in the woods. Slime molds eat some of the nutrients in which they are decomposing as well as what they attach themselves to. They are able to protect themselves by excreting certain chemical substances so that animals will not try to attack or ingest it. Slime molds has a parasitic relationship with what it comes into contact with because it immediately starts to chemically break it down. Nothing other than these slime molds benefit from their existence on the branches. However, the environment can benefit from this because they are decomposers. Slime molds are found in warm, damp areas, and climate change will benefit slime because it will make Earth warmer and more damp, causing the population to skyrocket. Onto the fungi kingdom for aquatic. In the kingdom of fungi, there is a phylum named Basidicidus, in which an aquatic mushroom is in. The name for this mushroom is an oyster mushroom. They live in subtropical regions of the world and typically grow in waterlogged and rotten trees. These mushrooms are known for their decomposition methods in nature. They live in rotten wood, so they decompose this wood and spread it back into the environment in which they are around. This makes the soil rich in nutrients and helps other plants around them flourish. These mushrooms spend most of their time decomposing materials in which they live back into the environment. Their genetic material has been passed down through centuries, which help them understand their role in the environment. Oyster mushrooms are able to survive in their environment because of the way that they decompose material. Because of the nutrients going into the soil for other plants to grow when these plants do in fact grow, it helps these mushrooms get enough oxygen and fresh air to survive. Oyster mushrooms are able to communicate with each other as well as other species through electrical pulses. They send these pulses underground in long intervals over time to figure out what is needed in the environment. On average, oyster mushrooms are in fact plentiful because of the amount of ecosystems that they can survive in. Not only can they survive in these aquatic ecosystems such as subtropics, but they can also survive in the woods and terrain such as that. They have been able to give back to their environment through decomposition, thus making it possible for more plants to sustain life in that area. This gives the fungi more oxygen and fresh air, which has allowed them to grow at such a pace in the past. Oyster mushrooms can eat rotten wood in which they live. They are also able to briefly paralyze worms and digest them. These mushrooms can protect themselves from danger by releasing chemicals into themselves so that animals will not eat them. Oyster mushrooms use mutualism in their ecosystem because they get a home and in return help other plants be able to flourish and survive. Also, these plants produce oxygen, which helps the oyster mushroom survive. Oyster mushrooms thrive in the temperature range of 65 degrees Fahrenheit to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. They also prefer that there is a constant level of humidity in their ecosystem. Climate change will severely affect the amount of oyster mushrooms on the planet. This is because they require a high level of fresh air as well as a constant humidity level. When the climate changes, it is because of carbon dioxide in the air, which makes the air not fresh and will make respiration difficult for these mushrooms. Onto the fungi kingdom and terrestrial. The kingdom fungi has a phylum named Zygotomia, in which bread mold is located under. The ecosystem in which this fungi forms is a damp and humid area. This mold contributes to the environment and its ecosystem because it breaks down nutrients and organic matter in food and other sources to give it to the ecosystem. Mold is formed as a result of moisture inside an object. When this happens, it is seen as not useful to the ecosystem, so mold comes to give it a purpose. This mold in particular has a main purpose of decomposing organic matter back into the environment. That is its sole purpose. This is why when it comes to its behavior, the only thing that it does is form, grow at a steady pace, and then decompose the material. Mold can survive in almost any environment because of how it forms. Most plants or animals can only take so much of one element, such as water. Mold, on the other hand, thrives on moisture, heat, and all the main factors that make an ecosystem exist. Mold decomposes organic material in order to help itself survive. This mold communicates through electrical signals. They communicate with one another to let them know what materials they need more of and whether this be oxygen, water, or food. This specific type of mold is the most common in the world. Not only is it the most common type of mold, it is the most common fungi on the planet. One thing that has helped this mold become so plentiful today is how easily it can form. All it needs is organic matter, such as bread, but it could be anything. It needs organic matter, water, and just a touch of oxygen. Mold feeds off of organic matter in which it lives. Mold is also capable of emitting toxins, so if it is eaten, it will make the predator very sick. This is done so that in the future, when you see mold, you will avoid it, thus leaving it protected. Mold, just like most fungi, uses mutualism. This is because they break down matter and give it back to the ecosystem, which makes the soil richer and able to host more plants easier. Climate change will affect mold in a way that is very beneficial to them. Because the earth is warming, it makes every building more damp and warm. This is the breeding ground for mold. And because of these high temperatures, mold will be in most areas of your house. Just about every building on the earth. I would like to thank these websites for helping me with this project. They gave me the information I needed. You can see it there and there. I hope you enjoy.